God for 48 years now, and my life is better than it's ever been. I didn't even know my life would be able to get this good. And it says in step, just a minute here. I want to go back just a second here. Where is that? Maybe I'm on the wrong page. No, it's in the last few pages, I think. It says somewhere in here, it says, it's talking about the steps, and it says, I'll say it the way I can remember it. Nothing short of continuous work on these as a way of life will bring the much desired result. And the much desired result is we want to be happy, joyous, and free. That's what it says in the big book. To be happy, joyous, and free. And so we need to identify these things and change them so that inside our head and inside our body, we're not always in conflict. So what that doesn't mean that you have to do it all the time. Like if I think that if people did the steps every 2 or 3 years, that would be good. You know, get together with other people and do the steps out of the 12 by 12 the way we're doing it. That would be a good thing for them, because you see what happens is when we identify our defects of character, and then in step 6 and step 7, we take these defects of character to God and we ask God to remove these defects. That's why the next time, say 2 or 3 years later, when we do the steps, it'll be different because we're not the same person anymore. And then it's like building a house. First of all, you have to dig a hole. Then you put in the basement. And then you put on the floor. And then you put up the walls. And you do it stages at a time. And then the last thing you usually do is put the roof on. And then you get the roof on so that the water doesn't come in when it rains. And then you can do all your work on the inside of the house. So that's what doing the steps is like. It's like building a house. And it's like you don't want to just dig a hole and then not put the basement in. And then once you got the basement in, you want to put on the floor and the walls and the roof and everything. And so that's why doing the steps continuously, but they're not talking about being obsessive about it and doing it 24 hours a day all the time or anything. But if you do the steps every 2 or 3 years, it'll be a different experience. Because I've been doing the steps since I was 9 years sober. And no 2 times I've done the steps have been the same. I always learn more about myself by doing the steps. And so this isn't an excuse to beat ourselves up or make ourselves feel bad. What we're doing is we want to identify what causes this problem so we can change that. That's the purpose of doing the steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and we thought conditions drove us to drink, and that's why we're always trying to control things.
Yeah.
Is because we think conditions drove us to drink, and then we tried to correct the conditions and didn't. Our drinking went out of hand and we became alcoholics. So they explain in here why we become alcoholics. It's all in here in the 12 by 12.
Yeah, I will read. But in AA, we slowly learned that something had to be done about our vengeful resentments, self-pity, and other. We already read that, isn't it?
Yeah.
We had to see that, to see how erratic emotions victimized us often took a long time. We could perceive them quickly in others, but only slowly in ourselves. First of all, we had to admit that we had many of these defects, even though such disclosures, which are painful and humiliating. Where other people were concerned, we had to drop the word blame from our speech and thought. This required great willingness even to begin. But once over the first 2 or 3 high hurdles, the course ahead began to look easier, for we had started to get a perspective on ourselves, which is another way of saying that we were gaining in humility. Of course, the depressive and the power driver are personality extremes types with which A and the whole world abound. Often these personalities are just as sharply defined as the example given. but just as often some of us will fit more or less into both classification. Human beings are never quite alike. So each of us, when making an inventory, will need to determine what his individual character defects are. Having found the shoes that fit, he ought to step into them and walk with new confidence that he is last on the right track. Now let's ponder the need for a list of the more glaring personality defects all of us have in varying degrees. To those having religious training, such a list would set forth serious violations of moral principles. Some others will think of this list as defects of character. Still, others will call it an index of maladjustments. Some will become quite annoyed if there is talk about immorality, let alone sin. But all who are in the last reasonable will agree upon one point that there is plenty wrong with us alcoholics, about which plenty will have to be done if we are to expect sobriety, progress, and any real ability to cope with the life. To avoid falling into confusion over the names these defects should be called, let's take a universally recognized list of major human failings. The seven deadly sins of pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. It is not by accident that pride had the procession, for pride leading to self justification and always spread by conscious or unconscious fears is the basic breeder of most human difficulties. The chief block to true progress, pride lures us into making demands upon ourselves or upon others which cannot be met without perverting or misusing our good God-given instincts. When the satisfaction of our instincts for sex, security, and society become the sole object of our lives, then pride steps in to justify our excesses. All these failings generate fear, a soul sickness in its own right. Then fear in turn generates more character defects. Unreasonable fear that our instincts will not be satisfied drives us to covet the possessions of others, to lust for sex and power, to become angry when our instincts demands and are threatened, to be envious when the ambitions of others seems to be realized while our are not. We eat, drink, and grab for more of everything than we need, fearing we shall never have enough. And with a genuine alarm at the prospect of work, we stay lazy, we laugh and procrastinate, or at best work grudgingly and under half steam. These fears are the termites that ceaselessly devour the foundations of whatever sort of life we try to build. So, when AI suggests a fearless moral inventory, it must seem to every newcomer that more is being asked of him than he can do. Both his pride and his fear beat him back every time he tries to look within himself. Pride says, "You need not pass this way," and fear says, "You are dare not look." But the testimony of AAs who have really tried to a moral inventory is that pride, that fear of this sort turn out to bogeyman, nothing else. Once we have a complete willingness to take inventory and exert ourselves to do the job thoroughly, a wonderful light falls upon this foggy scene. As we persist, a brand new kind of confidence is born, and the sense of relief to finally facing ourselves is indescribable. Describable. These are the first fruits of step 4. By now, the newcomer has probably arrived at the following conclusions: that his character defects, representing instincts gone astray, have been the primary cause of his drinking and his failure at life, that unless he is now willing to work hard at the elimination of the worst of these defects, both sobriety and peace of mind will still elude him, that all the faulty foundation of his life will have to be turned out of the and built a new on Broad Rock. Now, willing to commence the search for his own defects, he will ask, just how do I go about this? How do I take inventory of myself? Since step 4 is best but the beginning of a lifetime practice, it can be suggested that he first have a look at those personal flaws which are actually troublesome and fairly obvious, using his best judgment of what has been right and what has been wrong. He might make a thorough rough survey of his conduct with respect to his primary instinct for sex, security, and society. Looking back over his life, he can readily get underway by consideration of questions such as this.
Okay, let's stop there.
Yeah,
The thing here is like we all should be able to agree that there's plenty wrong with us alcoholics, about which plenty will have to be done if we are to expect sobriety, progress, and any real ability to cope with life.
Yeah.
And so that's that. It's like recovery is like an apprenticeship.
yeah,
Say you want to become an electrician. So you go to an electrical company and you say, I want to apprentice, I want to learn how to be